the recording.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I would say so. You
But
can watch later then.
I made redo a video for all the stuff we explained just before this. So right now we're going to create a new character. I was in the wrong folder actually. So yeah, I'm going to create a new character. But instead of just character, we're going to want to use modular character. And it's really going to do this stuff with a bit more extension event that we're going to need for the game feature action for gas, but all this stuff is not needed if we inherit from the modular character. So modular character, event graph. Did I duplicate it? Okay, not sure what was going on, but and now we don't need it. Let's test it. Just do baby step with our hello world content game feature and target now the modular one. Update our game mode to use the new controller, the new character, sorry. I may want to also save this map. That it doesn't bother anymore. Okay, but PP modular character is really a blank character, but it should still work. There, I was hoping it wasn't active because, and no, it's working. And we have our modular character used by the game mode. No blueprint setup because it's all handled by the CPP. And we have this one. That's something I need to probably handle because it's not needed by UE5. It's needed for 427 and it shouldn't impact UE5. But since that's something we wanted to do, actually, to add the ability system, this ability system to the character, it's done in the CPP, so it's not really a big deal. But that's something ideally I don't want to do with a companion. So something I'm going to fix, but it shouldn't impact the jam. It's using MGC ability system component. MGC is the prefix for modular gas companion, and the previous prefix was GSC. So yeah, all the new stuff added with 3.0 is prefixed by MGC. It's really just a child of ability system component, but with some abilities for us to set up gameplay abilities we want to grant to the character. So if you're not used to gameplay abilities system you need to prior to using the gameplay ability itself, you need to grant it to the character for the character to be able to use the abilities. If you forget to grant the ability, you won't be able to use the ability itself. So here it's just an array of gameplay abilities. The nice thing that we can do now is to set up startup effects, so it can be a regeneration, so health regen or health stamina regen that you want to have active on your character from the get-go, it's granted on the begin play. And the nice thing about this new setup that wasn't before in 2.0 is the ability to grant attribute set specific for an actor. So since it's not granting the attribute sets by default, the GSC attribute set is the one I showed before with the health, the stamina, the mana, and it's going to grant this GSC attribute sets from the get-go for the player character. And we can also initialize it with a data table. think I'm going to set myself. Yeah, so no notification anymore. And all this stuff can be done also with a game feature action that I'm going to demonstrate a bit later with this add abilities actions. But right now I just want to set up the ability system component so that we see that the attributes are initialized.
That's what you meant. You can add it on the fly for the
Yeah.
ability system.
Yeah, and that's a really cool feature. So that's the command to pop up the gameplay debugger, and we can see that now we are using it's not related to game feature at all because it's part of the setup of the character we did on the character itself. So you see all the attributes, but they're not initialized. Just to demonstrate it, let's delete, redo the stuff, and no attributes. Maybe we can just demonstrate. Oh, we can initialize with a data table. That wasn't part of the previous version. Let's create an abilities folder. Could probably create a data table folder, but for now we're just going to use this one. But instead of doing it with the plus icon right there, I want to do it manually. So it should be in miscellaneous data table, and here we need, if I recall correctly, attribute metadata. DT attributes. Let's keep it simple. Could be player attributes or AI attributes or enemy attributes. And if we add a new one, the row name is it has a very specific syntax to follow. It should be the class of the attribute set. So it's JSC attribute set. It's really the name of the class without the prefix. And then your attribute you want to initialize. So let's try with just the elf and set a base value of 100. Just for information, that the min value, max value, and can stack have really no effect at all. It's not handled by the engine, so don't bother with it. It could be cool to have the clumping done automatically, but that's not done right now. And if I use the DT attributes now, I'm hoping to see the elf at 100. It's not. I think I did maybe a mistake. GSC attribute set. Let me pop up my Java project.
It doesn't have to do with that you would need to unload and reload it?
I don't think so. I think I made just a typo in the... Just to be sure, I'm going to copy-paste it from there. Or I can even go through this setup because this has a very nice feature action already. That's all the thing I want to demonstrate today. It should be good now. There was a typo. Don't know which one, but it seems to be a bit different.
It's 3 T's.
Maybe 3 T's, yeah.
Yeah.
You have the elf on the bottom left at 100 now. So if I need to add more, it is easier when you got the first one right. The other one should be okay. I would recommend to do the max attributes before the elf, just as a safe measure. Since the attribute set itself is doing post gameplay effect reaction to when an attribute change, and those two are tied together. You should probably initialize before the max health and then the health, and same for the stamina and stuff like that. Those max attributes are used for clamping and stuff like that. So yeah, what I mean by clamping is that you probably don't want your health, if you have a regen, to go on and on and on and forever. You may want to have the health between 0 and 100 and make it like so. I think we're good now. Yeah, health and max health. And we can go through all the attributes, but that's not the point right there. But yeah. Maybe the next step would be to create a gameplay abilities, which is really simple. And let's try to now demonstrate the use of the game feature action. So all this stuff I did in the default character, I'm going to do it from the gameplay game feature action. So no attributes granted by default now. And we're trying to do this from the game feature itself. So before changing the game feature, like this little warning says, we should deactivate it before editing and saving and then reactivate it. Let's keep the add components. It's not really doing much. But now we are going to go through the real stuff for gameplay abilities, which is going to be very similar to what you've seen before. So we're going to target our modular character. And instead of components, we're now adding abilities and attributes. Let's go for the attributes right now, because that was we were using before. Let me see the Debugging Ability System. If I activate it, no change at all. Apart the component active now. That's expected because the attribute set is not set right. But if I do the exact same thing I did on the character, we should see this. Maybe not, because I need to unregister it. Okay. We can got a crash. I got it once. Yeah. That's why it's really recommended to not edit a game feature while it's active, because I had the game running while doing so. So yeah. And now I am live coding the overlay. Let's go. And once again, starting to annoy me, so I'm going to change one editor preference. Okay. Just need hello world, modular character, and don't even need this one. Let's remove it. We still have the granted attributes. It's not active right now. But if I activate it, it's not. Why? Because I'm not on the right map. Same error as before. Let me change one more. I should really do this as default. I think it's last or startup. Log level startup, the last open. Yeah. So next crash, I should be on the debug map. And we have modular character.
The actor class should be the modular character.
Totally, yeah. Thanks for that. That's the. Yeah, we got it.
Yeah.
And just to demonstrate it better, let's run always on top so that I can play with it. So right now it should have all the attributes since the game feature was active when we launched the session. And if I unregister, it's going to remove all the attributes. And right now I'm going to go through the same setup for the abilities. It's going to do the same for abilities. It would be, if we activate the game feature, it's going to grant all the abilities to the character. If we deactivate it, it's going to clean it up and clear from the character. So we need a new gameplay abilities, and I'm going to do this from within the game feature. And the idea I had in mind was to create just a jump ability, the most simple gameplay ability I would think of. So if you need to create a new gameplay ability, you should go through the file context menu, gameplay, and gameplay ability blueprint. And then you pick the parent class for your character, for your gameplay ability. GSC gameplay ability is likely to become deprecated, so I would recommend to go to gameplay ability. This gameplay ability adds the main functionality it adds is the ability queue support, but I don't think we are going to need it, and that's something I need to handle differently when the plugin will be ready for release. So let's keep it simple and just extend from the gameplay ability, which is part of a gameplay ability system plugin in Engine. I would recommend to prefix gameplay abilities by GA, and then what the ability is itself. On every gameplay ability, it's 90% of the time, I would say even 100% of the time, the stuff you want to do at the very first is to commit the ability. Commit ability is going to make sure that the cost and cooldowns are committed to the ability. So if you have cost for a gameplay ability, like you want to spend some stamina when you're swinging a weapon, you need to commit the ability for the system to really subtract at this moment the gameplay ability itself. And one of the things I like to do is to just branch based on the commit state. And if it's running false, another really important stuff to do with gameplay abilities is that at some point in your flow, you really need to end the ability. So otherwise, the gameplay ability would live forever. So right there, I need to get the character. To do that, I have a little function, which is get actor from actor info. The get actor info is something tied to the gameplay ability. It's a struct, which has a lot of stuff, exposed or not. Sometimes it's not valid, but if you need a reference to the player controller, it should be valid. This will often be null, but the comments says the contrary. But the most important one is the owner actor and avatar actor. That's two different concepts. Right now it's the same actor, because the owner actor is more like which actor is the owner of the ability system component. So if you're using a player state setup, it would be the player state. And the avatar is more the visual representation of the physical representation of the actor in the game, so our character. But in this setup, these two actors are the same. But what we want is the get avatar, is the avatar, and this function is written just that. But since we need to jump, and the jump is part of the character, I'm going to cast it, save a reference to it, or I don't even need to save a reference because I just want to jump. But for more complex abilities, when you have more stuff to do, one of the things I do very often is just set up some reference I need to use from within the ability at a later point, and just promote a variable, and so that I can use it. And same thing if it's not an ability, just to be safe. And let's jump. Right now, I'm not ending the ability right now here. We are going to do it later on. What I can maybe not go through right now is all the class default for the gameplay ability. So we have a really powerful framework based on gameplay tags to allow our block other abilities based on the gameplay tags on their gameplay tags, and each of these has a little comment that explain what their use are. So yeah, right now I'm not going to bother with it. We have the cost right there. It's a gameplay effect, which is subtracting some resource from your attribute set that you have granted to your character. And same for the cooldown. If you want to have a cooldown for your abilities, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, it will be a gameplay effect with a particular gameplay tag with a duration of 10, and the system would prevent the activation based on this cooldown. And to both these gameplay effects to have effect, to be active and impact the gameplay ability, you really need to commit the ability. Not forget to commit the ability. Okay, so now I have a J jump ability that I can use right there and try to go on to the character. But to activate the jump, we need some inputs to it. I'm going to do it from the character itself for now, and then demonstrate the use of enhanced input and the automatic binding. I think we have we don't need everything, but now we need to actually create the input. Let's do it in the content folder for now. So for this, we'll need an input action and an input context. Let's create the input action. I'm going to create EA jump. Can't let it as default because the default setup for the digital bool and it's to have a triggers that is just a trigger of down, and you don't need to. If you don't specify any triggers, it's going to use that as a default, which is just pressing the action with the most simple setup. And now we need a context. IC, do you have any preference for the prefix of this? Just going to input context. Basics. Yeah. And here is where we define the binding. EA jump, and let's make it on the spacebar. So now we can use it from the modular character. I think so. Yeah, we'll need to. There's one additional stuff we need to do for enhanced input to be active, but we'll do it a bit differently. It would be just to go to the controller and get the enhanced input subsystem. I think it's even the local one from the player controller. But it's something like this, and then you push. Yeah, and then you need a player controller and add input. It should be add mapping context, yeah, something like that. And then you push the mapping context for your controller. But we have a better way to do it with MGC. Ability input binding, and you can specify your context right there with an input priority, and it's going to be to have some importance if you want to leverage the game feature, and the game feature could override some blueprint on your some inputs on your character or controller if you specify a new input context with a higher priority, and if the bindings are consuming input, you can totally override that, and it's very nice. I think I prefer on add a little sprint string just to say hello, and now we need to activate the ability. So it should not, since we need to grant the ability to the character and that we're not granting it by default, it should have no effect when the game feature is not active, and it should jump when the feature is active. Illegal reference. Ah, yeah, that makes sense. Probably because I created the ability within the game feature, and we're totally breaking the encapsulation and stuff. So let's redo it. I'm just going to duplicate this. So it's the same ability as before, just in a different folder. And instead of using AGR jump, it should be cool. Let's try. So the first thing we need to test is to have the print on spacebar. So the input context is pushed to the character and it's working. So our enhanced input setup is done. But we're not jumping. I should probably add a camera to the characters to be a bit more visual, let's say. Hello world, active. So we're on the page of the attributes, but there's some commands. There's really 3 pages to the gameplay debugger. You have next category, prev category. You could also change the target of your gameplay debug. So if you have an AI, you want to see the attributes it's using, and you can use those commands. And the next category is the gameplay effects. We don't have any gameplay effects right now, but if we're going to add them, we would see them in this page. And the one I wanted to see is the J jump. So we see that the J jump is active on the character and granted. If I unregister, it's going to remove it. If I activate it and let's try to jump, it's not jumping. Why? Because I'm not granting the correct ability. Because of this, so let's for now just granting it. It would be by default without a game feature. Yeah, if the game feature is not active or active, it would be just granted by default. So we see the character jumping, and now let's do it from the game feature itself. I wanted just to demonstrate how to activate an ability with manually with an input, but now we are going to try to do it from a totally modular way of adding this hello world, J jump, and now we set up probably, let's go do some inputs specific to the game feature. So same stuff. I'm going to create a folder, an input action, a context, define some bindings. Exactly the same thing I did, but here it's within the and compartmentalized and encapsulated as a coherent set of code for your game feature. Should be this one, yeah. Spacebar, and we're good to go.
There.
Oh, Angel, nice to hear you. We started actually, but I recorded the video. Not from the get-go, but I think 20 minutes or 40 minutes ago, so I could send it to you.
Okay, great. You're teaching about abilities.
Yeah, right now we are going through the setup of abilities with without game features and with game features. And you just jumped in when I was about to start with the game feature itself. And right now we are on the input side of things. So I just created a new input action, a new input context. And the nice thing about game features, which is this one. So Angel, yeah, when you create a new game feature, it would be with this new plugin button within the plugin wizard, and they added a really nice way for plugins to add new templates for you to create, and that's really active only when the game feature and game feature plugin from the engine is enabled. And if you need to do a new game feature, you will need to do this, create some name for it. It needs to be within the plugin's game feature. I'm already going really quickly on this, but the video will go a bit slower on this. And you just create the plugin, and it would create exactly the same thing as we did before with the hello world. And the only thing it's going to create from the get-go is this data asset, which is inheriting from the game feature data, and is where you specify all the game feature actions and all the stuff your game feature is going to do for your game when it's active. So right now we have set it up a blueprint, which is pretty simple. You can see it has no input, there's even nothing in it. It's just extending from the modular character, which would do the same thing, because if you need your actor to receive some stuff from a game feature, you need to tell the system, hey, I'm a receiver for the game framework. And I think we still have just wanted to show it to you. No, I may have, okay, I'll go through at a later time. So yeah, you would need just to have a little node call to the game framework component manager subsystem, and there's a blueprint expose function which is at receiver, and you would need to call it on begin play, and on end play remove the receiver with passing in the character as a reference to the system. But that's handled by this class. Where I was? GA jump. So we're granting maybe I can just show you real quick. We have a really simple setup for the character. It's just a modular character with nothing in it. That's the little command I ran to pop up the gameplay debugger for the gameplay ability system. So show debugger space ability system. And here we see we don't have any attributes granted to the character. But if I activate it, since I'm specifying some JSC attributes, it's using the add abilities action from the game feature. It's borrowed from the ancient demo. And if I activate it, I should see all the attributes dynamically added to the character. So if your game feature is active from the get-go or during gameplay, it's going to add all the attributes you need for your gameplay abilities and stuff like that. And we're initializing it, health and max health, with some data tables you can see here. And it's also now, if I go to the next page with a little different command, we can see that there's this GA jump gameplay abilities. If I deactivate the game feature, it's going to clear it from the character. And what I wanted to do, is it a crash? I think so. No, I don't have any input, that's why. I thought it was crashing. Okay, so the GA jump is not triggering. Why? Right now, we did the same setup, Angel, with the character, where we activated the jump from a specific action, which was EA jump. When starting, we used a manual binding, I would say, where you try activate by class. And that's not the correct component, sorry. And you can activate an ability by tag or class. And that's really the simplest way to activate abilities. And those abilities need to be granted before activated with a gameplay ability system. So that's something you can do by default with this component, with these startup abilities, or with a game feature like we are doing right now. And what I wanted to do is just the next step to demonstrate how we can use input action tied to a gameplay ability to set up to trigger the ability automatically for us without having to have the manual setup of the binding to do. So yeah, but the thing I forgot to do is that the EAJF jump is tied to this specific mapping context, EC hello world, and the character doesn't know about it. And the way to do it, we have a new action, which is also coming from the ancient demo. So yeah, game features needs to use some actions, Angel, and those 4 are within the engine by default. And the one added by Gas Companion are tagged with Modular Gas Companion, and they are pretty much coming from the ancient demo. I didn't take all the action because they have a little more for to add some stuff to the map, but I didn't backported it. But that's the 3. That's really important for gameplay abilities. And the one we need to do for input actions to work with this setup is the add input mapping with the correct context we want. And we can set a higher priority or a lower priority than the one we're using in the character. So with this setup, you can think of...
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you don't mind. So I understand, I think like, in general how this works, but it's still a bit hard to get to wrap around. But is there, should you use, how to specify that? When you are using gameplay features, should you use them just on absolutely everything, or it is normal to have some mechanics and stuff hard-coded into characters and objects, and have game features that are very specific loaded and unloaded, or should we use it on everything?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Hard to answer because the engine, like they said in the Inside Unreal stream, they're not really pushing a way to do it. It's really about the game, your game, and that's a decision that they let us do. They're not trying to force anything. And the way you modularize and granularize, and if a game feature should be for each specific weapon, or have a game feature with a bunch of weapons, or if you need some stuff in the character by default.
So I see that some of the game feature, for example, adds components. So I think AGR is one of a good examples of how it could be tapped down into game features. Like the inventory item and equipment could be one game feature, while animations could be another one.
Totally.
And because they work separately, independent of each other, they could just be separate game features.
Yes.
But those game features, they also not only use components but abilities. But when you are triggering the abilities from inputs, like what happens if the ability wasn't called, what if the feature wasn't loaded yet and you try to call it? It will fail, obviously, right?
Yeah, it would fail, I would say, silently in the base case. And yeah.
Okay.
But to answer your question, it's really, you can do both actually. For the just strictly speaking about gameplay abilities, you have this component added by default to the character.
Yeah.
I added the MJC ability input binding, which is needed for the enhance input. So that's the stuff you would do for the player controller, where you get the enhance input system and add a call to add input mapping to your controller. That's something that is handled by this component. But if I don't have it in the character, when you activate the game feature, it's going to add it for you. So it's going to be transparent. But here we are having it if we need to have some input context to the character. And same for the ability system. So you can do both actually. You can have a set of abilities that you think is going to make sense to have every time. And I think for the jump, for sprinting, for stuff like that, it would make sense.
Like
and,
health, for example, in attributes, that you always want to have health, doesn't matter what's the context of the game.
Totally, that's it. So you can do both. So here you have an array of abilities you want to grant to the character. Right now, you don't have the ability to set up an input mapping tied to gameplay ability. It's game feature only. That's something I need to handle by the end when the release is ready. But here you can set up the startup attributes, the same thing we did on the game feature, and the startup effects. Effects are like health regeneration or stuff you want to leave on the character from the get-go and granting on big gameplay.
Those are abilities, the startup effects, or
Those-
they're just tags?
No, they're gameplay effects. Gameplay effects.
Okay, gameplay effects.
It's really
So it's like passive abilities.
yeah, totally. That's the correct way to call them. Yeah. And I use them a lot for regenerations, for the stamina regen and stuff like that. Okay, and now I wanted to try to see if the GR jump and the input action is working for the character. And I think it's not working because it's not active right now. If I activate it, I see that I have my attribute. I should have the GA jump, and if I spaced, yeah, got it. And it's activated. And if I hit spacebar again, it's not going through because I didn't ended the ability. If I go to the next category, we see that the GA jump is active, and it's not activated anymore because we see the input pressed, but it's not doing anything because the gameplay ability is not set up. Yeah, let me go through once again for the usual.
And does the inputs have to call abilities? Can we just call the function jump from the character?
Yeah, like I said, you can do it. That's what you just missed. Just before you joined, we did it from within the character. So maybe I can do that again. So let's unregister the game feature so it doesn't have any effect on the game. Try to just say hello so that I see that it's going through. Ability system component, you grab the ability system component and you have some expose blueprint function which is activated by class or tag. Tag is really powerful, but let's keep it simple with just a reference to the class we want to activate. I have another one which is the exact same as the GA jump from the game feature. But
Okay, I got another question. Does abilities check execution condition inside abilities? So do I inside an ability specify that it can trigger or can't based on some attributes and stuff?
Yes, you can. We have sorry, that's not what I wanted to do.
I think this is the blocking text check and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
you have this way, but if you need to have more power about on it, you have another available function which is can activate ability. It just returns a false or true based on what you want. And if you just, like Geno said, we have a really powerful framework based on gameplay tags. It's really standard with gameplay ability system. It's not related to Gas Companion. We have all this setup that you can use with gameplay tags to block other abilities when this is active. When you want.
So for example, if you are wet, you cannot get you cannot be burning. So it blocks getting caught on fire, for example, right?
That's that. Yeah, it would be if for this use case, it would be activation blocked. So it would be blocked if I don't have any gameplay tag.
Blockability blocks the ongoing effect of ability, but doesn't cancel it from you, right?
Can you repeat, please?
Because you said activation block tags means that you cannot receive ability with certain tag, right?
It would. This tags actually is if your character has some tag assigned to it. So, for instance, the burn effect or the wet effect. It would check if your character has this gameplay tag, and if it has, it's going to prevent the activation of this gameplay ability.
Oh, okay. So this ability cannot activate if you have this tag.
Yes, and for the other use case you are referring to.
And block abilities with tag, does it block receiving abilities, or it also... Oh, okay, yeah, it will be receiving, because cancel ability with tag cancels the ongoing.
That's it, yeah, totally. And that's something I use a lot for gauging abilities. So if I don't want to jump while I'm attacking, I'm going to say abilities jump is going to be blocked when this ability is active. You have a lot of flexibility and power with this.
And by the way, those tags, those are tag containers. You can have multiple inputs.
Yeah, that's should probably add some.
Okay.
But yeah, you can specify a bunch of tags right there. Actually, I have
Okay.
another project with a more involved setup. I'm going to go through real quick. But yeah, for gameplay abilities, just doing it really quickly, like I said before, the usual stuff you want to call on every gameplay ability is the commit ability and the end ability. Commit ability is really tied to the resource and the cost of your gameplay ability and the cooldown. Those two concepts are set up with the class defaults. It's gameplay effect that you can create, assigned to the gameplay ability. Gameplay effects are really a way to modify gameplay attributes for your character. So if you want to, for your melee swing to have some stamina cost to it, so you would create a gameplay effect that is going to subtract some stamina, and it's going to be subtracted when you commit the ability.
And if I can't subtract that much stamina, will the ability fail?
Yeah, it will
Oh,
fail.
okay. That's why there is this this return node, right?
Yeah.
So failed, then end ability. Okay.
And you have the same thing for cooldown. If you want to have a cooldown for your ability, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, it would be a gameplay effect. It doesn't have to modify attributes, it's just...
Because, okay, but it can also be based on something. So inside this gameplay effect, I can say that the cooldown depends on other effects.
It's maybe a bit more advanced. I would say it's probably possible, but I don't have the... I did not did it like you said. The most simple setup with cooldown is just to have a gameplay effect with a duration, because we are going to go to gameplay effect. But gameplay effect can be instant, can be duration based, so for just 5 seconds, could be infinite, so you need to handle the removing of the gameplay effect yourself when you want it, stuff like that. And for a cooldown, it's just a gameplay effect with a specific cooldown tag, because gameplay effects can be identified by tags also. And it's going to have a 5 seconds or 10 seconds duration. And if this gameplay effect is active on the character, it's going to prevent the activation of the gameplay ability, which is going to be the cooldown.
Okay, I got a question, but like this setup of doing jump as an ability, it makes sense only if you have cost to the jump, obviously.
Probably,
right?
yeah, totally.
Okay, and for jump end, specifying an ability would be redundant, right? You would just call the function jump end on the release of the input.
Yes.
Or would you do it through ability as well?
Yeah, you can also do it, I think, now with the input binding. Before, I wasn't able to use it because it's a bit legacy, but we have the input pressed or input release, I think. You could use this task to do this.
There's another reason why you would want to do the jumping through gameplay abilities, if you want to have it replicated and in a multiplayer context.
But jump is multiplayer replicated automatically.
Yeah, but for instance, when you want to play a montage, like you demonstrated, showcased in one of your tutorial, when you want to play a montage on when you land, and that's something you could use as a gameplay ability.
And it also handles client prediction and all that thing, that stuff, I mean.
And the other use case I would see that it would be useful to have a jump ability as a gameplay ability is that you can tag the gameplay ability jump, and if you want to prevent some abilities from running when you are in jump state,
you're like frozen or something, you cannot jump.
Yeah, and you can use...
Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
You can use this to prevent abilities with when you don't...
And if your jump has a hold time of, let's say, 0.2 seconds, how would you... and by the way, after jump, shouldn't you also end ability? What if you don't call end ability inside the ability itself?
Like we just seen in this... in this setup.
It will just keep on going.
Yeah, totally. You see it right now? It's active.
Yeah.
It's active, and yeah, it's active. So it's not
and
ended.
Do you have 7 copies of ability active?
Yeah, that's because it's using... you have some setup in the GA jump, which is instance per execution. The bug right now is that we're not ending the ability when it lands. That's what I want to do. But you can use also instance per actor, and it would prevent...
Okay, so you just can have 1 instance per actor, obviously.
Yeah. And that's what I would recommend for most
About
abilities.
the replication policy, why does it say do not replicate?
Most of the time you don't want to change it. you don't want to change it. I think it's going something to that they will probably not expose anymore. And if you go through gas documentation, it's something that they say that you shouldn't really change it.
So this basically just replicates between the client and the server, not through. And if you set it to, like, at least from the description,
it's tied to also this setup, these attributes. So local predictive would run the ability on client and on server. Yeah, with this local predicted.
okay.
I think
So if you have some RNG, some random generation of some saving throws or something, you don't want it to be predicted on the client, because always on the server and the client, the randomness would change. So you would probably execute the ability on the server first, right?
Yeah. For instance, if you have a critical rate to calculate, you would need to get the same RNG number on both client and server, and that's some advanced stuff to do, that you would need to send a series and stuff like that.
Yeah, but an ability that would do something like that, it could as well execute only on the server. That would be fine as well, I think.
Let's go.
Like if you random the damage, only the server needs to know the actual damage number rolled.
Yeah. The next step I wanted to do is to hello world register. We are going to JJump. On the spacebar, we're going to trigger this input action. And what we need right now is to end the ability. And the only way to do it, it's not really modular, because we need to really know when the character is landing. So we need to use this event from the character. And the way I would do it from the... I'm used to do it, is to send a gameplay event to the actor. A gameplay event is really about the ability system, so you can send some events tied to a gameplay tag that you're going to receive. So I need to pass the self to the actor.
Can't you just subscribe to the event in your game feature?
No.
From the character you can.
We have this?
Oh.
I don't
Yeah,
think
the problem with land
is on
event
the
is
move
that it runs.
component.
No, the land event is only on the client. It exists only on the client,
Oh.
on the owning client, to add even. So
But yeah, if we... Actually, we could have a specific CPP class that is going to expose the delegate that we could bind. Yeah, but for now, let's go for this.
All right.
It's going to also to demonstrate the use of a gameplay event, which is really powerful. So for gameplay event, I would recommend to have it within this root tag, and let's just call it landed. Keep it simple. And here,
okay, and the payload.
and
What is the payload?
yeah, the payload is something we're not going to use right now, but that's something you can use to send parameters across your ability.
Can you show just how it looks?
I think
if
you
you
can make a gameplay
this?
event data, and it's a custom struct where you can passing an instigator actor, a target actor. So for your when you are going to deal with damage, that's something you would use to set up your target actor. You have some U object that is super generic if you want to use it.
Like a weapon or ammo type, if you want to use it then to display that someone got a headshot or from a certain weapon or something.
The most important one is the target data, and it can work with hit results. So if you get an hit result,
Ability target data from hit. Oh, awesome!
so you get the location, the impact, everything.
You got a lot of info from it. You get even the bow name and other stuff.
Yeah, totally. And you can set up some magnitude. And, that's the way to pass parameters across your ability. Because it's a bit more advanced, but you can also trigger abilities by event. Just going to go through real quick. I didn't want it to talk about it, but here you have some ability triggers. You can set up a gameplay tag. You're listening for the trigger of the ability. And if your actor is receiving at some point this event, at some point in the game, it's going to activate the ability. But for it to work, you need to not use this node. It really has to not be present in the blueprint, and you would use activate from event, I think. and it would work. And that's where you can get.
And you cannot use both events, like the standard activation, this one, to do different things.
That's really specific about how it's implemented in the engine. If you have this event, it's going to totally ignore this. Because it's doing some check in if your blueprint has this event, even if it's not tied
and if you don't have this event and you don't call it from this event data, does it still use activate ability when you by hand activate an ability?
Yeah, it would take over this. Actually, it would prevent this event from happening.
Okay, but I mean, if you delete this one, so now you can still activate it by hand?
No, you just you're using by trigger. By event.
Okay.
But that's the only way.
So you would probably make an ability that does jump end on landed, basically.
Yeah, that's what I was about to do. But I wanted just to demonstrate if you need to pass some parameters to your ability with target data or tags or stuff like that, the way to go is to trigger them by event. Because you can pass a payload and you can't with just activate ability.
Oh man, I must tell you, I don't get half of it, but I absolutely love it. I need to learn that.
So let's go through to this setup. And we just wanted to end the ability, and we should, before or after, it wouldn't really have any impact, but you need to use the task. So gameplay ability stuff is using a lot of task for its ability task. And we have wait gameplay. So I think it's from this one.
A quick question about the ability task. Is this a wrapper for latent actions? Is that when you want to use gameplay tasks?
You have for gameplay task for instance to play a montage. You wouldn't use the play montage you're used to, but you would use a gameplay task. And there's one specific to Gas Companion, which is letting you use a montage and specify a tag that you're sending at some point in your montage. So if you're going to...
How do you call those tags? You have a anim notification that allows you to tag stuff?
Like this, with send gameplay event.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to register a hit, that's how I used to do it. So.
And can you show this montage again? Does it have also the payload? Yeah, it has. Oh my god, that is amazing.
That's yeah. What are you using a lot?
And the standard one, not Gas Companion. How does it look?
That's from Gas Companion. This one.
Yeah. Can you show the standard gas montage one? Yeah, to compare them to.
It's the same without the event.
Oh, okay.
And you have some events actually. It's uncompleted, unblended, uninterrupted, uncontrolled. And that's usually one other thing we want to do. Most of the time, I just do end ability on every one of these input, unless something really specific I want to handle. So it would end the ability when your montage is done.
Okay, and I have a question about execution of abilities. Let's say that I have a melee swing and I want it to not be able to interrupt by another melee swing. So if inside the ability I specify that it's just one instance per actor and I call the ability on melee swing and I hit input again, is it being automatically blocked for being called until the previous ability ends?
It's really depending on what is the instance or per execution, per actor, and how you specify your
so
tag.
say it's instance per actor. So this is the correct one to say that I can have only one melee swing at a time, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And you also have this, if you want to, I don't know, deal with combo. I have a system for combo.
Input release. Oh my god. So you could like either branch. So you could branch one attack on another at certain point?
You can, yeah. With this. The combo component I have with Gas Companion is doing stuff a bit differently. It's using an instance per execution class, gameplay ability, with anim notifiers, with an array of montage that is going through with some state management done in the combo component to go through the next montage when you have the input bound triggered by the player, stuff like that.
Okay, so basically each of, like how I would probably do it would be if I make a combo, each of attacks would be a separate ability, and the only way to trigger any ability except the first one would be branching from the first one.
Yeah, you have a lot of power. I think you have maybe 1,000 ways to do it, and that's really speaking about the powerful, the flexibility of the gameplay ability system, because you can do it from a lot of different ways.
How net performant is that?
Well, that really depends on, I think, on the combo component. I tested it on...
Because I suppose that it works like Able, so what actually happens is that the client just calls to the server saying, I activated this class of ability, please do the same on your end. And they don't really replicate on each step, they just try to execute in the same way, right?
It's really internal to gameplay ability system, but they're not replicating the whole ability blueprint. It's really replicating the handle of it. It's an internal structure in the gameplay ability, which is just an identifier for your gameplay ability, and it's going to get it from the client, and then try to get the correct ability on the client on the server and activate them. And it's just a struct with an identifier to it. Should we test our jump is ending now? So I don't have the ability right now. If I activate it and jump, and we have it ending when the character lands. So I think it's probably most of the stuff I wanted to show you today. Maybe I can go through real quick on my other setup, my other project, which is a bit more involved. To demonstrate also what I really wanted to show you is the anim layers stuff we can do. We did the input binding and the demonstrate anim layer, but I think it would take too much time to do it right there. So maybe I'll just go to my other project. So I have this game feature with a bunch of little test actions, abilities.
Oh my god, that's a lot.
So we have just two abilities, crouch and power walk. I think crouch is on control and this one is on shift. The same setup, granting the attribute set, pushing an input context with higher priority. And we're adding...
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Attributes can be only float values, right?
Yes.
What if it is important for my gameplay to actually have integer values? Would you still just use floats and use integer inputs on calculations, or would you make custom, let's just not use the attributes?
Yeah, you would just use float, I would think. It's really, yeah. It's not float actually. It's a specific type, but it's really just float. And you have no way to make it an integer or stuff like that. You can't have an attribute as string or stuff. I think Geno asks if I need to have an attribute set as a boolean, and I answered that it would be handled by gameplay tabs. But yeah, attributes are just numeric numbers, and by default they are float.
Okay. When you have small values on floats, they're quite reliable, right?
Yeah, I think in memory it's not that much of an override.
Oh, I don't mean about memory. I mean about error when you are comparing one value to another, or say that it's
okay, yeah.
greater or smaller. Like one of 1,000 error might be something not equal to something.
So what I wanted to show here, let me just see what the state is of this. this action is not active right now. Oh yeah, it's working. Next category, abilities. You see the power walk. I don't think it's really visible on stream, but maybe there. We have these four abilities: GI crouch, power walk, GI test, and GI jump. The two added by the game feature is the crouch and the power walk. And if I shift and hold it shift, it's going to go through the whole montage. But since I'm using input release within the gameplay ability to end the ability when the input is released, it's going to end it based on the input press and input release.
Can you show how it's being called by the input pressed and released?
Yeah.
I would love to see it.
So the gameplay ability itself, it's using the play, montage, and wait we were talking about. Committing the ability, ending the ability, play, montage, and wait, ending the ability when it blends out or completed, and just using this little task and
wait,
unreleased
input released
and the ability.
And how does it know the input?
It knows
which
the
input it is?
It knows the input thanks to this game feature specific input binding. So here it's
what? Okay, but a question. This is a actual use case. What if, for example, and this is a very specific use case, like I have a melee weapon game, right? And on left click, I start my attack, and then I charge it, and then I hold it. And on the release of the left mouse button, I execute the attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on the right mouse button, I make a block, and as long as I hold the right mouse button, I continue the block until I release it.
Yes.
But if I hold left mouse button and I charge the attack, if I hold while holding the left mouse button, so still in the ability, if I press right mouse button, instead of executing the attack, I cancel it. Because I want to have option of canceling the attack without execution. How the hell can I do that?
I really need to test it to see if it works, but I think the way you will handle it is the cancel abilities with tag. So that when you try to block to trigger the blocking, you would cancel the charging of your other ability.
But on my first click of the right attack, I don't switch from attack to block, I just cancel ability, nothing else happens.
When you click on the attack, the left click.
So I hold the left click.
When you hold, you already started the ability, and it is waiting for you to release, but you don't release it. So since the ability is already started, you want to cancel it instead of blocking the starting of the ability. It's already running.
Yeah. I want it to get cancelled, and I understand that I can cancel by blocking start, but I don't want to start block. I just want to cancel the previous ability, because let's say that attack has a stamina cost, and blocking also has a stamina cost, and I want to be able to cancel the attack. Doesn't matter if I can go into blocking or not. I want to always cancel the attack on very specific input.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is really advanced already.
Yeah, pretty advanced, but you could probably use gameplay events in your character that probably wouldn't work with just an input binding, automatic input binding.
Okay, so instead of input binding, I would call events depending on the context.
Yeah, you would have some logic to handle.
Because in this specific example I'm talking about, I would like to use left and right mouse button for different things. Like if I'm unarmed and then I want to pick up items, and if I have weapon, I want to trigger the weapon instead of activating abilities.
But for instance, in your charging ability, you would probably wait for a gameplay event at some point in your gameplay ability.
Yeah.
That you would.
So I could wait for multiple events.
Yeah. You can wait for multiple events. I think it's a gameplay tag, this one, but you can chain them.
We could try it out later for a game jam game.
So the GA Power Walk, I just wanted to demonstrate the wait input release, so that that's a very cool thing that wasn't working before 3.0. I think we have a press. Yeah, you have something like that. Wait input press, wait input release. You have cancel and confirm, which is more like if you trigger the ability and want to. You have this concept of cancel and confirm, like in mobile in LoL, when you activate an ability and you wait for a confirm input to teleport to the location of your cursor or stuff like that. That's
Oh, that's awesome. That would be perfect for the melee swing I talk about, because the first execution of the ability just prepares the attack, and the release of the input executes the attack. So release of the input would be confirmation, and right clicking would be cancellation of the attack.
And in this project, yeah, it has some inputs, etc. I'm still using this. What I wanted to show is the anim blueprint setup I have. It's really simple and really one-on-one, not doing much, but it's using it to demonstrate the anim layer pushing from game feature, which is really, really powerful. To do it, you could think of anim layers, which is not using an instance class right now, just using an anim layer, which is the full body layer. It's taking the input pose and passing it through to the output pose. To do this, I'm using an interface for this, an anim layer interface that both your anim BP needs to implement. So if I remove it, it's going to remove these animation layers. It's just using an anim layer interface that is specifying the input pose, the name of the anim layer, and some inputs. Input pose. That way, in the main animation BP, which is this one, you can think of a really involved setup in your animation BP, but at some point in your animation BP, you're exposing some slots or extension point for game feature to add some specific animation BP related thing to specific to your game feature. And if you go to the
yeah, like linked anim graphs has one major flaw that I wasn't aware of, but it exists. And layers don't have this flaw. They will work better.
And in the Enchanted game, they're using a really involved anim layer in the game feature to handle the dart ability. You know, when she goes up in the air and charge this powerful spell to destroy the environment. And they have some animation BP related stuff that they only push when the game feature is active. And the way they do this, they do it a bit differently because they don't have this action. It's using a component that is pushing the anim layers on begin play and clearing them on end play. But I added some an game feature action, which is doing exactly the same thing. You set up the actor class you want to target for your game feature, and you can specify a list of anim layers. And this anim layers is just an animation BP. I think it's just an anim instance, yeah. But the stuff it does is to implement the same interface as your main anim BP so that you can get the half body layer, the full body layer. And in this setup, the only thing I do is I push a montage slot specific to my game feature. It was just to demonstrate that the ability was working with the anim layer. But you can think of something fancier with it. Just using MCOF full body, which is not part of the main anim BP, but my ability is using this montage. And if I don't push this anim layer, just to demonstrate it doesn't work if I don't. Is it active right now? Yeah, it's there. By the way, I'm on client right now, so that's standalone. And if I activate it and I do the power walk, you see the animation is not playing. It's actually playing the root motion, so it's using it's moving my capsule, but the animation is not working because it's using a slot that is not part of the animation BP.
So how is it playing root motion animation if the slot is invalid? How the hell?
That's something I figured out while testing it, but yeah, if you're using a root it seems like if you use a root motion ability animation with an invalid slot, it's going to move play the animation, actually move the capsule, do the root motion without playing the animation.
Oh, so it's just extracting the root motion from the animation separately.
Yeah, it seems so, yeah. It seems so.
Awesome.
Because
so there's probably you can check it very easily if you want. You can open the animation blueprint, and when it says that it takes root motion in the setup, you see this root motion in the bottom right. Here already you see it. Root motion from montages only, and say from nothing. Ignore root motion. So now it's not extracting any root motion, and now it will be only ability based if it still works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
Maybe it was
no root motion extraction. To try the last one.
Yeah, I think I need to apply it. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't applied. Yeah. Totally. I'm shifting right now. I'm activating but it's not using the root motion.
Ah. So it's still playing from montages that he doesn't have. That's strange.
Huh. What was the default value? Well,
this is the default value.
This one, yeah. But yeah, this animator thing I wanted to show is just to demonstrate that you can push, you can do stuff that is taking the input pose from your main animation BP, do some stuff for your game feature and that your abilities need or your game features need, output a new output pose, and you get this from your main animation BP. And yeah, I think it's really a powerful feature.
The only problem with layers is that it's still just a single anim graph, which means that it's a blueprint, which means that it's binaries, only one person can work on it at a time.
Yeah, but that I think helps with a large team also, because the main animation BP is not, if you're working on a game feature yourself, and you don't need anymore to modify the main animation BP for your character. You can do it in an encapsulated way within your game feature that you're going to use an anim layers for your. So I think it's going to help with that issue of multiple people working on an animation blueprint. So yeah. Do you have any more questions? I think we got through it. I'm sorry, it's it's noon and a half. I wanted to be within an hour, but I think I covered most of the stuff I wanted to show.
Yeah, I guess I don't have more questions about that at least. I got like a million questions about abilities in general. I'm unfortunately probably going to make some tutorials for Gas Companion. Sorry about that. So I will have a lot of questions.
No, awesome.
Regarding that.
That's awesome too. Yeah. I'm super glad. Yeah, they're good. Good to know. So if it's all, I think I'm going to stop the recording now.